Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. Welcome back. It is bright and sunny, yet freezing cold, actually below freezing, here in the Rochester land on Saturday as I filmed this the day before. As you can see, History by Mail has returned once again for the month of February. Pardon me. But before that, a little sports history. Last week, the Penguins finally retired number 68 for the living legend that is Jaromír Jágr. The traveling Jágrs were back in town. And apparently Drake was rather upset at Jaromír Jágr because he couldn't get the hotel room he wanted because Jágr was in town at the same time he was. Sorry, Drake. Pittsburgh is not your city. Pittsburgh is Jaromír Jágr's city. But now, the History by Mail, and we have fingerprints. Attached to Exhibit C, 22256. Rosa Parks. Her fingerprint sheet. Wow. Oh, on the back, Police Department, City of Montgomery. 12-1-55. Very good using that. Complaint J.F. Blake. Blah, 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 blah. In front of it. Yep, there it is. Yep, we received a call upon arrival. The bus operator said he had a colored female sitting in the white section of the bus and, would not move back. Day and Mixon. Don't know who they are. Oh, wait, down there. The office also saw her. The bus operator signed a warrant for her. Can you do that? Rosa Parks. See if there's her address. Well, I'm going to assume WM white male, CF colored female, was charged with Chapter 6, Section 11 of the Montgomery City Code, warrant number 15254. This offense is declared, blah, 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 and there's the signing officers on patrol, 7 p.m. Well, we all know what happened there and what the eventual fallout of that incident was, and let's see. Police report bus diagram. Okay, that was this thing that we saw here. Okay, and as you can see, that's where she was sitting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows back. All right, let us get into it. Rosa Louise Macaulay Parks was born in Tuskegee, Alabama in 1913. Rosa and her younger brother were raised by their mother and maternal grandparents on a farm just outside Montgomery. 1932, she married Raymond Parks. Oh, okay. A Montgomery barber and NAACP member. She received her high school diploma in 1933, a time when very few African Americans graduated high school. That is quite true. In 1930, it's hard to think. That's almost 100 years ago. In 1943, Rosa joined the Montgomery chapter of the NAACP and was elected secretary, a position she held for 14 years. While serving as secretary, she also took a job at the Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery. While local and state laws enforced racial segregation, federal law did not permit segregation on its property, and Rosa rode the Air Force trolley along with white employees. After her time on the Air Force Base, Rosa worked as a housekeeper and seamstress for the Durr family, a white family that sponsored her education at the Highlander Folk School in Tennessee, where she learned about activism for workers' rights and racial equality. Sorry, it's getting a little weird running through the camera. But I have to do it through the camera so I know it's on. The Jim Crow laws. There were state and local laws that enforced racial segregation in all public places. Jim Crow laws were enacted in the Reconstruction era after the Civil War in the former Confederate states and were upheld in the 1896 Supreme Court case Plessy v. Ferguson under the separate but equal doctrine. Well, we all saw how well that worked out. However, facilities for African and Native Americans, in addition to being separate, were generally inferior to those of white Americans. On buses and trains, Jim Crow laws enforced separate sections for whites and blacks, and in many states, including Alabama, there was no school busing for black schoolchildren. Rosa remembers walking to school while white students took buses. The bus was among the first ways I realized there was a black world and a white world, she said. That's a very sad statement to have to make. In 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Brown versus the Board of Education. Hey, we saw that one, I think it was last month, or the month before, one of those two. that separate educational facilities are inherently unequal, yet it took several years for this ruling to be fully implemented. As with any ruling, the bus incident. Jim Crow laws reserved the first 10 seats of the Montgomery buses for white passengers. Colored sections were in the rear of the bus, even though more than 3/4 of Montgomery bus riders were black. The division between sections were determined by a movable sign, shocker, marked colored. Black passengers were permitted to sit in the middle rows, provided there were enough seats in the front for white passengers. If more seats were needed to accommodate white passengers, black passengers were required to move. Black passengers could not even sit in the same row as a white passenger. Sorry, I lost my place. Even across the aisle. Further, if there were already white passengers sitting in the front, black passengers were required to pay at the front, then exit and re-enter through the rear door. Can you, just to take a quick break, can you imagine the things we could have accomplished if we would have put this much time and effort into separating different groups of people to something important? On one rainy day in 1943, Rosa Parks paid her fare and moved to take her seat. The bus driver, James Blake, forced her to exit the bus and re-enter from the back. When she left through the front door, he drove off without her. 12 years later, at 6 p.m. on Thursday, December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks boarded the Cleveland Avenue bus. She paid the bus fare and sat in an empty seat in the first row behind the colored sign, directly behind the 10 seats reserved for white passengers. When the bus reached its third stop in front of the Empire Theater, which is where it happened, several white passengers boarded, but the white section was already full. The same bus driver who left her in the rain a decade earlier, well, that's weirdly ironic, was driving the bus that day. James Blake moved the colored section behind Parks when he saw white passengers were standing, and he demanded the 4 black passengers give up their seats. Flip. As Rosa Parks recalled, when that white driver stepped back toward us, when he waved his hand and ordered us up and out of our seats, I felt a determination cover my body like a quilt on a winter night. Rather than move to the back of the bus, Rosa Parks moved to the window seat. Blake called the police, who proceeded to arrest her. Rosa Parks was charged with violation of Chapter 6, Section 11, segregation law of the Montgomery City Code. While in police custody, she was fingerprinted and briefly incarcerated. Later that night, she was bailed out by E.D. Nixon, president of the Montgomery NAACP chapter, and her former employer, Mr. Durr. She was tried on December 5th, 1955 for disorderly conduct for violating local law in a 30-minute trial. She was found guilty and fined $10 plus $4 in court fees. You can't even get a fast food meal for $14 anymore. And then the boycott. Rosa Parks' case was used to publicize the cause against segregation. Members of the Women's Political Council, the WPC, made thousands of flyers announcing a bus boycott in Montgomery. Announcements were also made in black churches in the Montgomery area and in the front page article in the Montgomery Advertiser. The plan was to boycott Montgomery buses until black drivers were hired and seating in the middle of the bus became first come, first serve, regardless of race. On the day of Rosa's trial, the WPC distributed the flyers. Despite rain, Montgomery's roughly 40,000, black commuters walked, took cabs, or carpooled. That night, organizers formed the Montgomery Improvement Association, the MIA, a new organization to lead the boycott, and elected the 26-year-old and relatively unknown, at the time, that would not last much longer, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. as president. Montgomery city officials tried to subvert boycotters by preventing cab drivers from lowering fares to support boycotters and pressuring car insurance companies to revoke black owners' policies so they could not use their private cars to commute or carpool. Despite these attempts, the boycott lasted 381 days and left dozens of public buses idle and crippled the transit economy. Again, what I said probably 4 or 5 minutes ago. Can you imagine what we could have done if instead of going to lengths like this? Browder versus Gale. Now, this is one I'm not familiar with, so we're all going to learn something together. Excuse me. In March 1955, 9 months before Rosa's arrest, Claudette Colvin was arrested for not giving up her seat on a Montgomery bus. The next month, Aurelia Browder was similarly arrested, prompting local activists to begin planning a boycott. Oh, I did not know that. Or maybe I did and forgot. By the time Rosa Parks was arrested in December, the community was ready to act. 4 Montgomery women became plaintiffs in a suit against the city's mayor, W.A. Gale, challenging the constitutionality of state and local segregation laws. Rosa Parks appealed her court ruling. Civil rights leaders saw her as the ideal plaintiff for a test case against segregation laws since she was married, employed, politically savvy, and a model citizen. However, civil rights leaders shifted their focus to the case of Browder versus Gale, figuring a federal case would be more successful than a state appeal. On June 5, 1956, a federal 3-judge panel ruled Montgomery and Alabama state bus segregation laws violated the 14th Amendment in the Browder versus Gale case. 5 months later, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld the decision, legally ending racial segregation on public transportation in Alabama and ending the Montgomery bus boycott. Legacy. Let's see. Rosa Parks' refusal to give up her bus seat that day in 1955 changed the world and earned her the title the First Lady of Civil Rights. Her quiet protest sparked a successful boycott which captured the world's attention, raised awareness for the plight of African Americans, and made her an icon and symbol of the civil rights movement. After the boycott, Rosa Parks moved to Detroit and served as secretary to African-American U.S. Congressman John Conyers. She continued to be active in civil rights causes until her death in 2005. Rosa Parks received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the Congressional Gold Medal, and was the first woman to lie in honor in the Capitol Rotunda. That I did not. Maybe I do. God, she's been gone almost 20 years now. The second in the 4 pages in our civil rights series, I guess last week with Thurgood Marshall was the first. To learn more about Rosa Parks, there's your URL. And once again, history, for all it's ugly, we must learn it because we have to know why we're here and where we can go from there. Not much else I can really say. Another one of these fantastic installations from History by Mail. I'm enjoying them. I hope you guys are as well. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Be safe, be warm if you're in the polar area like I am, and we will see you tomorrow.